Okay, and then we're going to come down here. You see where it says participants? So that's where we're going to have this up. Hey, that's neat.
Gosh, that beard really looks like Santa Claus from this angle.
Mm-hmm. What is this? Oh, that's neat. Okay. And then you'll probably want to have that up too at some point.
What is it?
That's a chat room.
Oh,
so
yeah.
that you can see when people
that
are saying hi to you. But that's really going to be after the meeting starts. And then you'll do your recording.
Let me play.
Yeah. I just want to see something real quick.
Okay.
So all you're waiting for right now is for her to dial in. And then you'll see this where it switches out, and then you'll see somebody else.
So do I share?
We want to.
Here we go. Put it up. We'll put it up somewhere, probably going to put it up on the 30FSS page, but I don't know, that's still up for debate, and our IT guy is going to figure that out. So, but with that, people are still coming in. Okay. I have a note from Danielle Mastelaire that to everyone that she says, we will be hosting a Zoom Key Spouse Social early next week with Colonel Mastelaire and Major General Shaw guest speaking. And she will send a time once it's confirmed. So that's good. We're going to do that. With that, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Captain Fletes from Mental Health. And I'm just going to go ahead and mute myself and let her go ahead and.
All right, thank you, Dwayne. So my name is Captain Fletes. I'm one of the psychologists over in the mental health clinic. I really want this brief to be as interactive as possible. So if you have comments, questions, y'all have had a lot of experience, been a lot of different bases, heard a lot of different things. So I'd really want as much participation as possible. If you have a comment or if you've experienced something or dealt with something, please don't hesitate to raise your hand so we can make this and learn from everyone's experiences, not just from the professional standpoint. So why do we do this briefing? Why is it important for key spouses to receive suicide prevention briefing? Pause that. You want to share the PowerPoint on the screen? All right, so why do we do this briefing? Suicide prevention is one of those hot topics that we all really want to engage in. We have this desire for this to never happen to anyone. And why specifically do spouses benefit from this briefing? You guys are the ones on the ground level. You guys are the ones who see things, hear things the most. Most of you will be the first person to ever hear of anyone struggling with something. Some of the major issues that happen, you guys are the first line of defense to hear them. You guys talk to one another. You're in the know of what's going on around base. And so we really think it's important for you all to have the ability and understanding what to look out for, and what to do about it, and how to bolster some of those resiliency skills to help other spouses and to help your significant others, your kids, friends, all of those things, so that suicide doesn't have to be something that we deal with here at Vandenberg ever, or anywhere in the Air Force. So with that, the key is going to be, next slide. So the key is prevention, right? So we obviously, if someone's already struggling with something, we definitely want them to get the help that they need. But our primary goal is for us to be able to see those signs early on and get people the help that they need early, so that they don't have to fall into that aspect where they need maybe some higher level of help or care. So with that, we're going to go into some of the risk factors to look out for. Next slide. So all of this came from what's called our DODSR, or our DoD Suicide Event Report. So anytime there is a suicide attempt or a completion, we fill out a very extensive report about what happened, what were some of the contributing factors, so that we get a full comprehensive picture of what was going on in that person's life that led them to that. So hopefully we can use that data to then influence some of the factors and some of the prevention efforts that we do have in order to target those specific categories. And between the DoD across the board, this is not just an Air Force report, this is a DoD wide. So we really want to take information from as much as we can and have that many more data points on how to help people going forward. So some of the things that they found when they ran these reports were the contributing factors included relationship problems, substance use, work or legal problems, and financial problems. So all y'all are married, so relationship problems usually come with work problems or financial problems. They're not usually only one thing. So those are the top factors, and it's really important because if you see one of those can easily start influencing the other. If you're having financial problems, you're probably not going to have the best communication at home sometimes because of those financial stressors, and then that might be distracting you from work, and you might start to experience work-related stressors. Oftentimes people will turn to substances to help kind of cope with that. So all of these things kind of fit together, and that's why there are top contributing factors, and we really want to focus on those things and make you aware that if you're on the playground with your kids and you hear people are having one or two maybe of those problems, that might be a red flag for them to maybe go to Airmen and Family Readiness Center, go to the financial MFLAC, get some help early on so that they don't kind of continue to spiral, and because we know that those are such high risk factors for suicide and for depression. Other factors are major life transitions. So PCSing is very stressful. Deployment, whether you're coming back or before you go, or your spouse is currently deployed. Long TDYs, retirement, any major life stressor, a new baby, maybe you're caring for an elderly family member. All of those things are big life transitions that can really have an impact on someone's risk level. Medical problems, chronic medical conditions, acute medical conditions, all of those are very stressful and can add a lot of extra stress within the relationship, within friendships, financially, all of those things. Academic or life failures, whether it is not getting an EPR or OPR they were hoping for, not getting the award, maybe having some disciplinary problems at work, all of those things. Work stressors, academic stressors. A lot of people are in school, especially right now. When we're at home, we have a lot of free time, so people might be starting to get back into schoolwork, and they might have been out of it for a little while, so that can be very stressful when they don't feel like they're where they should be, and that can cause some tension as well. Severe, prolonged, and unmanageable stress. So I'm sure not one of us could raise our hand and say that we have no stress, right? All of us are experiencing some type of stressor. What we're talking about here is when it's prolonged or unmanageable and we feel like there's no way out of that, or all the coping skills that we normally would use are just gone. And right now, specifically in this culture, in the world that we live in right now, a lot of our coping mechanisms are being taken away from us. I know going to the gym is a huge one for me, and that's something that I'm not able to do, and I'm having to get creative about it, but it's just not the same. So when we talk about some things that we can do, we'll talk more specifically about how to be creative with that and how to have that emotional and community when we are in this very unique world that we're living in at this time. Finally, recent or severe loss is another major risk factor that the DOTSR data showed. So whether this was a loss of an individual, they had a work member, coworker, family member pass away, or they just felt the loss because of some of the other things like the life transition and they PCS'd and their friend group was gone and they just PCS'd to some place that they had no real social support and they're very much feeling that loss. So these are important factors for us to consider when we think about suicide prevention and things to really look out for. Next slide. All right, so some of the warning signs. And Danielle, I got your question, and we will definitely get to that in a second. Some of the warning signs that we need to look out for: hopelessness, depression, anxiety, agitation, anger, irritability, unusual or sudden changes in behavior. People who are normally pretty social are very withdrawn. You don't see them at the park as much. When you do see them, they're just not as engaged in communication. They might seem more disheveled, or their hygiene might be decreasing slightly. They're either overeating or not eating enough. They're complaining about either hypersomnia, which means that they're sleeping way too much, or insomnia, where they're just not able to rest, or they're sleeping in bursts instead of like a good consolidated amount of sleep at night. Loss of interest in things that they used to be interested in. They used to be really into fitness or really into baking, and they're just not doing those things anymore, or it takes a lot of effort for them to want to participate in the things they used to do. Increased alcohol and drug use. This can be very subtle, and often it can be, oh, I'm just having a bad day, so I'm having a glass of wine. And that turns into every night I'm having a bottle of wine, and those kinds of things. They happen gradually sometimes, but those are important things, and people usually give you a pretty good indication early on that they're struggling with something like that. Unusual risk taking, or maybe behavior that is not aligned with who that person is. Normally they're a pretty conservative person, and they're just acting in a way that is not similar to how they used to be. And that can be with personal appearance as well. Individuals who are maybe dressing different than they used to, all of those kinds of things. And then some of the ones that are more common and probably a little bit more severe are making final arrangements, giving away things that mean a lot to them. I know that's one of the big things that people speak about towards the end, when they finally made that decision to end their life, is they will start to give away meaningful tokens that they have, because they don't want those to be left, and they want them to go to who they want them to go to. So they will be giving away things that are very meaningful to them. And the last one might seem like a little bit odd, but this is probably one of the scariest warning signs for us as mental health providers, is a sudden improvement in mood. So if you've seen someone who's just kind of gone down, and then all of a sudden they have a really good day, and it's just out of the blue. I don't know how many times we've had to hear, but we had the best date last night, and they were so happy, and we went to the movies and had this wonderful dinner, and then the next day they were gone. And this usually comes from somebody finally making that decision to commit suicide or to end their life. And that the stress and the weighing on them of that decision is usually why they start to have that decline. And once that decision is made, their mood improves. They're at peace with the decision, and that is something that we definitely need to look out for, because that is kind of our last time to really get them the help that they need. So with that, I want to open it up to some questions. I know Danielle asked, dependents who are also at risk for depression, anxiety, suicidal tendencies, access to care is an issue. Absolutely, especially in this area. Unfortunately, it's really difficult to find mental health care in the local community. And that this is something that the mental health clinic is actively working on. We're trying to use this time where we don't have as much patient care in the clinic to really reach out to local providers and see who we can get, who accepts TRICARE, all of those kinds of things. I know Military One Source and A&FRC are a great option when someone's at maybe a lower risk level, but as we get into that higher risk level, it really is something we're actively working on to try to really bolster up that list of providers that we can offer to these dependents. And for these dependents, if you're struggling with something, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We will find you somebody. We will get you a VHOP appointment so we can at least bridge that gap until we find you a provider in the community that can help you and to give you the care that you need. So with that, we will pause. If anyone has any other risk factors, warning signs, experiences that they have seen as far as people who might be at increased risk, or something that you've learned for this part of the brief that you would like to share with everybody. And if you want, you can either raise your hand or unmute yourself, and it should allow you to ask a question.
I have a question.
Yes, Angelina.
My therapist, I've been, for myself and my two children, I've had to pay out of pocket since we moved here for care. My daughter attempted suicide in October. And she said that the problem in this area is that the insurance companies are provider saturated, which means that despite there being an extra need by people, they have the required number of providers to satisfy the area numbers. Is that accurate? Is it not likely going to change? Because I know that that made sense to me. Like my son's therapist just got certified and he can't get on any panels. So I'm just wondering if that's possibly what's going on, or if there are more providers out there, we just haven't looked hard enough.
I have not heard that, but that is definitely really helpful, and I can definitely ask that specific question. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much. If you'd like, you can send me an email privately about specific providers that we can look into. If there's anyone in specifically that we should be kind of approaching for that.
I have something to add about that. One of my son and I are also seeing an off base for mental health, and my daughter actually ended up taking my son's spot because he needed to come off, but she said that there was a pretty long wait for her as well. So I know that there's at least some providers are giving estimated wait times, or saying that, you know, they have a certain amount of people that are still waiting in line.
Mm-hmm.
So I do know that that is an issue for, I've heard a couple people saying that they're on the wait list for mental health specifically.
So so when it comes down to it, I have to drive, I have ADHD and they make me see a psychiatrist for that. And I have to drive all the way to Oxnard for my doctor because there are none available up here, and there hasn't been in over a year. So I don't know. I mean, if there are better lists now, maybe, but there hasn't been any mental health going on for dependents at all that I could find the entire time I've lived here.
Okay. And that is definitely something we are actively aware of and looking into. Unfortunately, the area has what it has, and we're trying to get creative about that. Danielle, I see your question. That is definitely something we can look into. I'm not aware that was looked into. It might still be at a higher level than me, but I can definitely broach that question and see if that is an option.
Yeah, I think north I had to go all the way clear into San Jose, and I'm not kidding when I say that far. And then south, it was Oxnard was the closest I could find. And I'm like, this is insane that we have to drive this far for a doctor. And then by the time you get down there, you know, you can plan 2 hours out, 2.5 hours, I think is what I planned. I think actually I planned 3.5 hours. But you get stuck in traffic, you're not going to make the appointment. And then, it just ends up being a whole thing from there. And I'm like, this is ridiculous that I have to drive this far for a freaking doctor every month.
Yeah, that is.
And that's just that doctor. That doesn't include all the other ones, but I know we're talking about mental health right now. So, I mean.
Right. And I know that's definitely been an issue in certain areas depending on geographical location of bases. And this is definitely a challenging area with the resources that we have. But that is something that we can address with the med group as far as what are the options. We're around Santa Barbara, San Luis Obispo, and I know there are providers there, so I'm not sure why they're not approved for TRICARE and those types of things.
Well, and I guess my question too is with this corporate healthcare thing that they got going on now, which is part of my problem. I refuse to see the same doctors at every single place. I will not use Dignity Health for everything. So that's the other side of it, is Dignity Health seems to be taking everything. And I'm not just going to use my brain and go and be corporate. That's just not going to happen. No, that's just not going to happen. And that's the other part, is it's like there has to be somebody besides Dignity Health out there that we can use. If that's that's just there. I mean, is that not a monopoly? So I don't know. I mean, one of those things is, and I don't mind Dignity Health for one or two things, but I'm just not going to go down the road of doing corporate health care. I don't know. And I know everybody has different opinions on that one, but
Yeah, I definitely appreciate that feedback. And we'll definitely see what we can do. And Angelina, I will work with the caseworker in the clinic to kind of see what we can do with regards to that. I know, especially right now, there's a lot of providers who are doing telehealth appointments. So because of the culture that we're in currently. So we will look into some of those resources. I know there's a lot of providers who are struggling out there. A lot of my friends who are providers are struggling to get a caseload. So this might be a great time to start kind of initiating some of those and getting more people on board.
Is there a way that we can look into maybe getting, at least for children, a pediatric psychologist on this? I know we had one and she went private sector because, I mean, normally when there's school, I don't mind driving to Santa Maria to go see my person for me, but for me bringing my kids, having to sit there and take them out of school an hour early so I can drive the 40 minutes get to Santa Maria because it's normal business hours. It's not like the clinic to where I can take them out of school and they'll be back within an hour or so just because it's already on base.
Okay.
Never thought about that.
Sorry, I'm just writing notes down. Anyone else have any questions, comments before we continue? All right, so the next slide we're going to go into is resiliency factors. So we talked about the risk factors, we talked about warning signs. What are some of the positive factors that keep people in the place where they are able to work through some really difficult things? I mean, I know all of us know somebody who's gone through something unimaginably horrible, and they've been able to have that level of resiliency. They've been able to kind of push through. And what are some factors that you guys have heard or seen people have who are able to do this well, or things that you yourself have done when you've been faced with something very difficult? What are some of the key factors that have helped you?
Personally, for me, having access to the chaplain, the base chaplain, has been really helpful because depending on what the situation is, if you are religious, it's good to have a perspective from your religious point of view versus just a regular psychiatrist who gives a very broad description or broad advice.
No, that's a great one. I know spirituality and faith is a huge resiliency factor. Again, from that Dodser report, one of the biggest things is having some type of faith or spiritual background and the ability to practice that and have community with people who also experience that similar spiritual or faith belief. So that's a great one. Thank you. Okay, and being a service to others. So getting involved in a meaningful way where you feel purposeful, not necessarily a long-term commitment, but going out there and helping others is a good resiliency factor as well. Thank you for that one. Any other ones people have thought of or experienced themselves? So some of the ones we focus on helping people with are getting help early on, reaching out early on, whether it's through the chaplain, whether it's through seeking out mental health treatment, whether it's going to BHOP and getting some practical skills to help with whatever problem it is, and having community. Community is probably the biggest factor in the triad of suicide. Feeling like you're a burden to other people and not having that sense of community is one of three main factors why people actually commit suicide. So having a support system, even if you're new to this space, even if you don't know anyone, having one person can make all the difference in the world. Having people at your last base, people from home that you can talk to, putting yourself out there to be part of groups like Key Spouses, just to meet people, even if you only go one time, doing that social next week, getting connected with people, especially right now. This is a time where we have to be a little bit more creative about how to get that social community. So if you have people and it's been difficult and the kids are at home and everyone's at home, scheduling those Zoom dates, right? Watching movies with your friends, having somebody that you can talk to that's your go-to person is a really, really big thing. Good physical health. So staying active, even if it's just going for a walk around the block, even if it's doing we have all the time in the world right now, so doing a squat challenge as you're cooking dinner, doing a push-up challenge, making it fun with your kids, all those kinds of things. Just staying physically healthy, those endorphins and all of that will definitely help your mental health as well. And then leaning on the things that make you happy. So everyone's different. Some people really like movies. Some people really like to read. Some people really love to cook, pets, whatever it is. Really think and talk to your friends. What are the things that you specifically need? This is a really stressful time for a lot of people. We are very blessed in the military to have money still coming in and having that income, where a lot of people in this world right now don't have that. So getting creative about how we can be thankful and talk to our families about that right now. This is a great opportunity to get to know your family, get to know your children, get to know your spouse in a very different way than you might have time for. Get creative about date nights with your spouse. Make a dinner, watch a movie, play a game. I know on Pinterest there's plenty of questions to ask your spouse to get to know each other, pins that I keep running into. So get creative a little bit and share with one another what you've been doing. Maybe someone has this great idea that you just hadn't thought of, and that's a way that you can continue to feel connected, not only with your family, but with your friends and your social community, as well as your family, wherever they might be around the world. Continue to do that too, because they're feeling just as isolated sometimes. Any other comments about resiliency factors? Danielle, thank you for your question. So dependents will go through the case manager, but if you have questions or need resources, we can always offer those. But the family health clinic is much more in the know as far as the procedures of going through that. So the case manager would be the point of contact. Major Owens is now in BHOP full-time and can also kind of field some of those questions and provide some assistance with regards to resources. But never hesitate to reach out. Even though we can't see dependents in the clinic, we can definitely give you the resources. So Major Reed in the mental health or in the med clinic is someone who can answer questions, as well as the two case managers. And I will make sure that Dwayne emails out their specific information with good contact information for you guys to reach out to them. And we will get an updated list that he can also send out of resources that we know about in the local area, because again, it is always changing, and right now is specifically a time where there's a lot of providers out there who want business. So if we can definitely have those conversations and get people in touch with providers now, that'd be really helpful. So thank you again for your question. All right, we're going to go on to what to do if somebody comes up to you as someone struggling. You notice some of those things, they're disheveled, they're withdrawing, all of those kinds of things. So some of these might seem like, okay, yeah, I already know that. But others of them just kind of need to be stated. So listen, right? It's so hard for us sometimes to just sit and listen or sit and be with someone because we want to fix it, right? We're parents, we're spouses, we want to just fix it, we want it to be better. Sometimes all they really need to do is listen, need you to do is listen. And that's okay. Listen to what's going on with them, and then there will be a time for you to kind of ask questions or in that kind of thing. Now, obviously, if they're at increased high risk and they're talking about wanting to end their life, then that's the time where we're not going to just kind of listen at that moment. We gonna need to do something. So that's a time where you just got to use your judgment about what they need. But some people early on just really need someone to feel like they're there for them and that they're heard and that they have someone that they can go to in the future. The best thing you can do, there's a campaign called Be There, and the DoD and the VA adopted this campaign. And it simply is be there. Just be there for people. Just because they might not feel like they can open up to you at that moment, if they remember you were there for them and you just wanted to listen, you were new and you didn't really know anyone, and they invited you to go out to lunch, they were going to the grocery store, you were going to the grocery store, they asked if you wanted to go together. Those little moments of just being there for someone open up the opportunity that when they are having a hard time, you're going to be someone they reach out to, and you're going to be able to help them where they might not have felt like they could have reached out before. So that's a great campaign. If you're interested, you can just Google Be There campaign, and there's a lot of great resources on there as well. A lot of good talking points about how to kind of engage in those conversations and ideas of simply just how to be there for people. If we're past that point and someone is endorsing suicidal ideations, asking them specifically, like, do you feel like you want to end your life? Do you see any options for the future? Do you have a plan? It's really important to get that information so we can know how to help them. If they're saying that, take it seriously. Get the help you need. I promise you, they're going to not be mad if you kind of go a little bit over the top to get them the help they need than if you say, oh, well, they didn't really mean that. So take it seriously when someone says that and get help. First sergeants, chiefs, commanders, mental health, anyone in the med group can get you the help that you need as far as getting them resources, getting them to the right person. Don't leave them alone. Make sure that when you're leaving them or you're done talking to them, there's someone else there with them. And if push comes to shove, the ER is where they need to go, and they're going to be able to get them the help they need as well. One thing that we hear a lot is someone who's having a hard time, just don't tell my husband, or just don't tell anyone. I don't want anyone to know. As much as we want to feel like we're on their side and they can trust us, we can't promise this, because there are times where we have to break that in order to make sure that they're safe and that they're okay. So not promising secrecy is a big one. And then just being genuinely saying, I care about you. I want to help you. I want you to feel like there's a future worth living. There's so many wonderful things that you have going for you. And just being genuine in your concerns as well as your care and your hope for them for the future. Some creative things people have done to feel connected and to kind of do this are, again, Zoom dates. I know we did like a chick flick and wine night with my girlfriends on Zoom, and it was fun, and it wasn't the same as all being together, but it was a fun way of connecting with everyone and feeling like we were still kind of sharing in those friend times. There's so many online options right now to do devotionals together, or just checking in via text with someone. Everyone's at home, stuck, segregated. Having that connection and that community can just be what they needed in order for them to feel like they have someone on their side. You can go to the next slide. And then be direct and be assertive. So as much as we don't want to get into other people's chili sometimes, these are times where we really have to be assertive and direct and ask those difficult questions. I hear sometimes people saying, well, I don't want to put it in their head if they're not thinking about it. I promise you, if you're concerned about it, they've thought about it. And you're not going to give anyone any ideas that they haven't already thought of if they're in that depressive place. So be assertive, be direct. You asking those questions is telling them that you're okay with it. Not that you're okay with them having those thoughts, but that you are a safe person for them to disclose that to, because you're not afraid to have those conversations. So simply by asking them that question, you're opening up an invitation for them to be able to be honest and open with you. If you feel like this is something that's out of, again, your scope and you've gotten to the point where you feel comfortable, please reach out. There's other friends and family who have gone through similar things. Call mental health, go to the ER, call the A&FRC, call the chaplains, ask somebody else, first sergeants, commanders, supervisors. They're all trained in how to handle these things and what to do next. So please never hesitate to reach out. This is not something that you have to figure out on your own. There are resources around to help you kind of guide you through that process. Next. All right, so balance, right? Nobody has all protective factors and nobody has all risk factors. There's some balance that we need to maintain, and at certain points in our life, that balance can sometimes feel like this and other times feel like this based on what we have going on in our life, and all those kind of factors that we've talked about before, but balance. So when you feel like life's getting a little harder, really figuring out, sorry, someone's calling into the office that I'm using. Figure out what you need. That might be you needing to proactively reach out a little bit, or if you notice that you're hearing things that someone's having a hard time or someone just got some bad news, be proactive and help kind of bolster up some of those strengths and reach out. Don't wait till it's too late, those kinds of things. Next. All right, so we have the 4 pillars. We have physical, emotional, social, and spiritual. Active duty, we hear about these all the time, but they're important for everyone, right? So if we're not physically taking care of ourselves, if we're not eating well, exercising, taking care of medical issues, then that pillar is going to sink, and all the other ones are going to have to try to make up for it. And that's when we feel like we're not off balance. We need all 4 of those to stand firmly. So if there's an area of those, please reach out and ask someone, like, what do you do when you feel maybe like spiritually you're not being filled enough? What are some things we can do? When you're not emotionally getting your needs met, how can we do that? Please don't hesitate to reach out for ideas. Airmen and Family Readiness Center always has amazing ideas, especially with regards to the emotional and social aspect of it. Reach out to the Chaplain Corps with the spiritual one. Physical, I know that's a difficult one right now because a lot of the exercising and things like that are not an option. Eating healthy is more difficult sometimes with regards to access to those things. So this is a very unique time, but be creative and be proactive about it and talk to one another. I'm sure you guys have a chat page or resources where you share ideas. If you come up with something cool, share it with someone. You might be helping that person who feels really stuck and they just can't kind of think of something to do for that specific thing. So share with one another. That social next week that Danielle was mentioning sounds awesome and like a great way of you connecting with people and being able to establish some of those connections that you might not have met before, that then you can kind of bolster up that social aspect as well. And then next slide. So this is something that's used often, wingman. So all of us are wingmen, not just people in uniform, right? So we have to take action, and this is just kind of like a quick cheat sheet way of doing that. Do they have a desire? Do they have the means? Are they taking care of those four pillars? And make sure that you don't leave them alone. Give them that positive handoff to someone that can get them the help that they need. So suicide it can sometimes seem like it's a personal problem for people. It's a community problem. And therefore we need to respond appropriately as a community. So everyone in the Air Force needs to have a wingman. Find your wingman. If I asked everyone on this call who their wingman is, could they say somebody? Could they give me a name? That's one of the things we do when we're doing a safety plan with someone who comes into our office that we're concerned about. We ask them specifically, I need a name and a phone number of who your wingman is. And it forces, sometimes people can easily say that. Other times they really have to think about, if they were in that place, who would they call? So right now, I want you to stop and think. Write it down in your mind, on your phone, whatever it is. Who would be your wingman right now? Who would you call if today you needed somebody? And I hope everyone is able to come up with somebody and think of that person. And if you feel comfortable, reach out to them right now and tell them, like, you're my wingman. If I ever need anything, you're who I'm going to call. Establishing that now can maybe help someone going forward. Next slide. One more. All right, so here are some of the resources that we have. There's chat rooms, phone numbers, all of those things for you to call. There is an abundance of online resources. Please don't hesitate to utilize them. And then if you have somebody, if you have questions, part of why key spouses are so important is because you guys are the first people who talk to pretty much the whole base, right? So active duty gets a lot of resources, and a lot of times it goes at one ear and out the other, and it's really important for when they're at home and they're really struggling, you're there not only to help each other, but to help your spouse, your children, your spouse's friends, all of those things. The more people that know about all of this, the more help we can get someone that much faster. Next slide. Yep, next. One more. All right, so now we're going to open it up to questions. If anyone has any specific questions that we haven't already discussed, or anything, thoughts, comments to share with everyone else on the call.
Just real quick, can I ask Dwayne, do you mind emailing those contacts, the phone numbers, and the, you have that? Y'all went faster than I could write it down. And that's me. I don't know how to screenshot on my computer.
We'll send that out to you.
Yeah, we'll send out the numbers. Anything else? Questions, comments?
Do you know if there's any kind of been any kind of surge in like crisis intervention in the area? Like with the, I know my daughter attempted, there had been like 6 other kids in 2 months, and I just wonder if like with mental health, if kids and parents are trying to access more resources right now, like in base wide and stuff, if there's any kind of like anything geared towards like that whole dynamic of being at home for the kids that
Sure.
that help kids that already suffer with mental illness during this time.
I haven't heard any specific data regarding that. Anecdotally, we've noticed a decrease in depressive symptoms, but an increase in kind of family conflict and alcohol use. There's a lot of people who are at home who aren't used to being at home for that long a period of time. So it's been definitely a stressor, and those kind of are always go together. So in the adult population, we haven't really seen an increase in suicidal ideation or depressive symptoms or anything like that. Across the US, we have seen increased tension within individuals. We're taking out a lot of people's resources that they would normally use to escape and to get away and to take that time. And it's in some ways forcing people to directly face what's going on, and that can sometimes be helpful, and sometimes they're not ready to do that, and it causes more problems than it helps. But those are some of the trends that we've seen kind of locally and then globally. I know I spoke to Military OneSource the other day, and they've seen an increase in utilization of telehealth services through Military OneSource across the world and DoD. Any other questions? Thank you for that. That's helpful. So Military OneSource is for everybody that lives within the family home of an active duty member. So please, if you're having difficulties and your kids want somebody to talk to, if you need someone to talk to, please don't hesitate to reach out. It doesn't have to be anything in particular. They just might want someone to talk to, and getting established with a telehealth provider is definitely a great way for them to kind of get that outlet and start processing some things. So I would definitely encourage people to use Military OneSource. And because right now everything's telehealth, there's a lot more availability for people to have that at this time. Any last questions, comments? So we will make the slides available, and then we will get the case manager's information and make sure that Dwayne sends that out to everyone. If you have any lingering questions that come up, please don't hesitate to reach out to him and he can get those to me, or you can look me up on the global. First name Alexis, last name Fletes. It's F as in Foxtrot, L as in Lima, E as in Echo, T as in Tango, E as in Echo, S as in Sierra, and first name is Alexis, the normal spelling. Or you can always call the clinic and they can get in touch with me as well. So I appreciate everyone taking the time. It's a really important topic, especially in our world today. So the more you guys do kind of on the ground level, the more we're not going to have these things go any further than they need to. Is there a place other than ER?
Looks like there's a question in the chat about, is there a place other than the ER for people to go since this whole COVID thing?
Sure, yeah. So unfortunately, the only crisis intervention for someone who's actively suicidal would be the ER, because they have the appropriate means to triage if there's medication needed, if they need to do a hold of any sort. So if someone's to that level, the ER is going to be the place that they would get sent to. I know they're doing a great job in the local ERs of triaging people so that they're not trying to get individuals who are at increased risk intermingled with people who are there for other reasons. But I understand that is definitely a concern a lot of people would have. So the ER should be used for people who are at acute risk of hurting themselves. And at that point, we have to take that risk in order to make sure that they stay safe. Great question, Katie. Bye, Daniel. All right, well, I appreciate all the questions. Again, if you guys have any questions that come up in the meantime, please don't hesitate to reach out to Dwayne and he can definitely get those to me. And I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Thanks so much, Captain. Really appreciate you doing this brief. Thanks everybody for coming today. I will send out an email with the information that you requested. This session was recorded, so you can let the other folks that weren't able to be here find it on the record. I'll also send out an email where we're going to post that. We're not sure where we're going to put it yet, but I'll send it out where you can find it. And thanks for coming. Everybody stay well, be well. And if that's it, I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting. So take care, and we will see you soon. Bye-bye.